In the time period that we study, the 18th and the early 19th century, Twelfth Night is a huge deal. Now, growing up in America, I kind of lost on Twelfth Night for a long time. I didn't realize what it was until I started researching this time period. But in other parts of the world, this is still a huge celebration. And while Christmas was kind of subdued, especially in the 18th century, and even when you celebrated that, you would just kind of celebrate that more with family. Twelfth Night was celebrated with everybody that you knew, quite likely, and it was huge. Everybody played a role, and you had really wonderful, spiced food. They pulled out all the stops, and we're going to make a plum cake today that is worthy of a Twelfth Night celebration. We'll get into a little bit more of what's going on with Twelfth Night throughout this video. I want to get into the food a little faster, but just a snippet here is we have the 12 days of Christmas, and if you're not familiar with that whole concept, you've probably at least heard the Christmas carol that goes through the 12 days of Christmas and all the gifts that you're giving to somebody or you're getting. Now, the 12th day of Christmas aligns with the Epiphany. And so basically, this is, in the Christian sense, a celebration of the Magi coming to Jesus Christ, baby Jesus. So the three kings come to Jesus, they give him gifts, and that's what we're celebrating on 12th night. And so the whole Christmas season, it kind of starts on Christmas. For us over here in America, we kind of end on Christmas. But Christmas season starts on the 25th, and it goes through January 6th, and that's when 12th night is. And that's when the three kings came, they presented their gifts, and this is the biggest day of celebrating throughout the whole season. Traditionally for this day, there are a lot of celebratory foods, and there are different punches, and there are different things made with apples. There's wassail, there's kind of fruit cake, almost kind of pastry things, depending on where you're at in the world. But commonly for Europeans in this time period, they're eating some kind of a plum cake. Now you might see queen's cakes or king's cakes or 12th night cakes, but a basic plum cake is what we're gonna do today, because while we wanna do something celebratory, we've made pretty vast, huge celebratory cakes on the channel before, but I also want this to be really approachable for you guys as the viewers. Sometimes making a yeast cake, because we don't make them commonly, can be intimidating. And sometimes you don't want to go into, I need 7 different kinds of candy fruits. We just want to make a very simple cake. Now, this is still going to be heavily spiced, and it's going to be definitely a cake that you could use to celebrate. It's going to make your kitchen smell incredible, but this is a very basic plum cake. Today's recipe comes from English Housewifery from Elizabeth Moxon, and it's said to have been written around 1741. I don't know if they've got that nailed down, but it's right there. To make ordinary plum cake, take a pound of flour well dried before the fire, a pound of currants, 2 pennyworth of mace and cloves, 2 eggs, 4 spoonfuls of good new yeast, half a pound of butter, half a pint of cream. Melt the butter, warm the cream, and mix together in a very light paste. Butter your tin before you put it in, an hour will bake it. Now let's talk about what a plum cake is really quickly, because you don't have to necessarily only stick to these ingredients. It calls for mace and it calls for clove, which we are going to use today, but nutmeg and cinnamon would both be appropriate and were used in a lot of cakes like this. The other thing to say about this is that it uses yeast, and that this calls for ale yeast. Nobody has ale yeast at their disposal for the most part, so just go to the store, get you some dry yeast, put it in some warm water. It takes, I think, a packet of dry yeast to a quarter cup of warm water, and let it sit until it starts to bubble and it's ready to go. Now you can set this aside to rise, but you don't have to. I've made cakes both ways, and sometimes after you let it rise, it still seems like it sinks when in the baking process, and sometimes you don't let it and it seems like it goes crazy. So I don't know what to tell you about that. To each their own, but when I make cakes like this, I generally just go ahead, get the yeast activated, get it all mixed up into our paste, and then get it in the oven. The first thing that we want to do here is get our cream and our butter warming on the fire. You can do that separately, or you can just go ahead and put them together. Just make sure you stir it. We don't want this to boil or burn. While that's over the fire, basically we're just trying to melt the butter and warm the cream. We don't want to get it so hot that when we put it in here with the yeast and the eggs, that we ruin that. So we don't want to cook our eggs, and we don't want to get our yeast too hot. So our yeast is activated. We're going to go ahead and add that to our dry ingredients. But first we're going to mix up all of the dry ingredients. So we got our flour in here, our mace, and our clove, okay? And just give that all a nice stir together. And we're going to put our yeast in. After that, we're going to crack 2 eggs in, And we're going to slowly add our butter cream mixture and just start stirring that all together. Now this recipe doesn't tell you an order to do this in, so I'm saving the currants to very last, because after I have this into a paste and it's still warm, I can kind of make sure that those get pushed in and incorporated all the way through, so that we don't end up with a cake that's all cake on the top and all currants on the bottom because they've sunk. So we want this to be nice, kind of solid. It's gonna be a light paste, but it's gonna be strong enough to hold those currants where they're supposed to be. All right, so our batter or our paste is at the right consistency now. I had to add a little bit of flour because I had a little extra wet ingredients. You're gonna have to feel that out for yourself. But really, it should just be a nice loose paste. You should be able to kind of pick it up and it wants to hold together, but not just like a firm ball. If you haven't cooked with a tin cake ring before, this can be a little bit tricky, but it's not difficult once you know what to do. So we're basically gonna take some cold butter and we're going to coat the whole inside of this, okay? And then we're gonna put it down on a piece of paper, and where that section is that connects with the cake ring that's underneath, we're gonna butter that whole section of our paper as well. And then the paper is going to stick to the bottom just a little bit, so it creates a seal. And then it's ready to go in the oven. We're just gonna put our whole batter in there. We're gonna make sure it's kind of even, and we're gonna get it in the oven. I'm gonna bake this at 350 degrees for anywhere between 50 minutes to an hour, and it should be good to go. Building up to the Christmas holiday is Advent. So during Advent, we're being kind of self-reflective. We're embracing the cold. We're embracing the long, dark nights, and we're just kind of chilling out. We're taking it easy. We're maybe lamenting a little bit. And then Christmas comes along, and bam, we've got celebration for 12 days. And then every day is kind of building up to 12th night. But along the way, we have different things that are happening. Normally, Christmas is celebrated with your family, your immediate family. And then you've got these different parades and festivals where they're flip-flopping poor for rich, and they're poking fun at politicians, and politicians understand that it's a joke and they need to laugh at their expense, and they're pretending that poor people are kings, and everybody's kind of playing a role and having fun with this, and everybody has a character almost. And so depending on where you're from, there are other traditions that come into play here, but all of this is to say we're trying to level the playing field for this 12 days, and everybody is just celebrating and having fun together. Here's a reading from the New Monthly Magazine and Literary Journal from 1829 that I think sums this up really well for the time period. Twelfth night is perhaps the most agreeable of all the domestic holidays. It has not the novelty of Christmas Day, which is the great breaking up of the dreariness of the winter. It is at once quieter and more social. Select friends are invited, which is not always the case with the family Christmas party. Everybody becomes of importance, young as well as old. For everyone on the 12th night has a character. And then there is the cake, an eatable sacred to the night only. Our cake is out of the oven. It's set up just fine. It looks really great. It smelled incredible in the kitchen. Goodness gracious. Now I want to do something really special for this, because we did do like the kind of lower tier of a plum cake. I want to add some icing on this, and a really good way to do that from the 18th century, and you see this in cookbooks quite a bit, is that we're just going to take egg whites and sugar, and we're gonna mix them like crazy. And this can take a really long time. This can take hours. So if you have an electric hand mixer at home, break it out, because you're gonna want it. Now, we don't want it to be so loose that it kind of falls off of the cake, but we don't want it to be like hard, somewhere in between. I have seen recipes where this can take up to 24, 25 egg whites to do, but we're talking about cakes in the time period that would be 30 pounds. I mean, humongous cakes. We're not doing anything like that. So I'm a Midwesterner from the United States, and sometimes it's difficult for me to understand that there are calendars that people abide by other than just dates and months on the year. So even though I was raised in a household that was a Christian household, my dad was a pastor even, we didn't follow a liturgical calendar, and I didn't understand what Advent was until I was an adult. So we've got Advent that's building up to this Christmas season. This Christmas season is a celebration. It's a light in the darkness. That's what's happening here. They're celebrating in their dreariness. It's going to lead right into another fasting period. So this is feast, and that's how the old world worked for a long, long time. And we're not just talking about the 18th century. We're talking about from the beginning of history. There's feast and there's fasting. and it's back and forth. And so you'll find a lot of recipes from the time period that are fasting recipes. And this is a celebratory one. So when we make this cake, when we do this, we are going to fill it with spices, and we're going to say, okay, this is time to celebrate. That's what this cake is all about. I'm pretty happy with how this cake came out. The currants are all evenly placed through there. They didn't sink to the bottom. I'm not very good at frosting things, but you know what? It worked out okay. Now, I've seen different ways where this icing can kind of get puffier, and it didn't really do that. I took it about as far as I thought that I could, but it's sticking to the cake just fine. It's not too runny. I think everything's going okay. So let's give it a try. We've got a piece here. And so it's interesting, there's no sugar in this cake. So we're just gonna see. Whoa, okay. No sugar needed. There are so many currants in there. You don't need any sugar at all. It's crazy because it's just all coming together. Those currants are great. They're giving you that sweet touch that you want. You get a little bit of sugar. I'm glad that the icing is not super thick on this because it'd be too much. But man, those cloves and the clove and the mace just kind of just like bombs. It's really, really good. It's dense, which I like dense cakes. It feels like it'd just be like wonderful with a cup of coffee. For this being a very basic version of a plum cake, I can't believe how good this is. It's very impressive. I think that you'll really enjoy it. You should make it for a family function, and let me know in the comment section what you guys do for 12th night. Do you know what 12th night is? Do you have any kind of elongated Christmas season traditions that you do? I'd love to hear about it.